Welcome to the 37th week of this year's In Times Like These recap. Now let's get into this. Starting with Vivian Jones, who asks her lover Pacho Torres about the vigil, and he admits he's still struggling to accept his younger sister Ulissa's passing, especially dreading the upcoming funeral. Vivian tries to reassure him, reminding him he has family and her for support. However, Pacho reveals he doesn't expect her at the funeral because the Russos, especially Clarice and Ben, would question her presence. Despite Vivian's insistence she could handle it, Pacho refuses to risk it. He also shares concerns about Isidore taking advantage of Isabel's vulnerability. Pacho expresses his regret that Vivian's plan to distract Isidore is tied to his sister's death, but he believes Isidore deserves to lose his family's company for exploiting Isabel's pain. At Theodosius's palace, Isabel Torres is surprised by a visit from Clarice Russo, who offers condolences instead of condemnation. Isabel is taken aback when Clarice admits she'll never fully forgive her, but understands Isabel's grief. Clarice compares Isabel's loss of Ulissa to her own loss of Elvira, expressing sympathy that Isabel didn't have to witness Ulissa's final moments like she did with Elvira. Despite their painful history, Clarice acknowledges that Devante fooled them all, and finds peace in knowing he now understands the pain of losing a daughter. The Dorvals visit JJ in the hospital as he recovers, and though he mentions his head feels strange, they encourage him to take things slow. When asked what he remembers, JJ recalls Kiev pushing him and becomes frantic, warning his family about Kiev's plan to harm students at the school. They try to calm him, explaining that Kiev is in custody, but JJ insists on knowing if Kiev's plan succeeded. Eventually, Jeremiah and Shelley reveal that Kiev did bring a gun to the school, injuring Max and taking Ulissa's life. Devastated, JJ blames himself, but his family reassures him that Kiev is the only one responsible. Despite their comfort, JJ remains guilt-ridden over Ulissa's death. Dr. Terry Burke tells Alan Russo that he can't come with her, but Alan insists he'll find a way to meet her, declaring that his life is with her. She warns him that leaving Valley Park would mean he can never return, and he'd be banished from his family. Alan dismisses this, but Terry remains unconvinced. Alan pleads with her, saying he doesn't want to live without her, and she admits she feels the same but refuses to let him come, not wanting to hold him back. She reminds him of his future with Russo Jewelers and his lost inheritance, but Alan claims he doesn't care. Terry insists he has a life ahead of him, unlike the one she wasted with Finnegan. She reveals she'll go into hiding, distancing herself from Kiev, but laments she can never erase being his mother. Alan sorrowfully asks if he'll ever see her again. Terry somberly tells Alan this is their last goodbye. Alan, unsure of life without her, is reassured by Terry that he'll be okay and will eventually find someone special. Though Alan insists no one will compare to her, Terry agrees, thanking him for their summer together and for showing her what real love is. She kisses him on the cheek before tearfully leaving Valley Park. Isidore approaches his father Lorenzo at Russo Jewelers, hoping to reconcile now that Terry has left town. However, Lorenzo is fixated on the losses of Dante and Martina, blaming Isidore for the disaster caused by Terry and her son Kiev. Isidore's attempt to explain only angers Lorenzo, who believes Isidore should have known better. Vivian Jones arrives, cutting the tense conversation short, and Lorenzo dismisses Isidore. Alone with Vivian, Lorenzo reveals that Isidore's actions are unforgivable, leading him to reconsider making Gianni the heir to Russo Jewelers. As Vivian leaves, she secretly plans to acquire Isidore's shares next. Max Russo returns home from the hospital, haunted by the tragedy of being harmed by Kiev and losing his friend Ulissa. When his parents Gianni and Heidi ask how he's feeling, Max bitterly questions how he's supposed to be grateful to be alive while Kiev is still alive and Ulissa's life is gone. Blaming Heidi for not acting sooner to bring Kiev to justice, Max accuses her of letting things spiral, even calling out her past affair with Kiev's father. As Max storms off, Gianni comforts Heidi. At the hospital, JJ asks his older sister Vanessa about Max's condition, and she informs him that Max will be discharged soon, hoping JJ will be out in time for Ulissa's funeral. Although relieved, JJ admits he's not looking forward to it. Curious about the tragic day, JJ presses Vanessa for details about what happened to Ulissa. Struggling to recount the events, Vanessa explains how Kiev caused chaos in the library after admitting to pushing JJ down the stairs. JJ grows angry, questioning why Max confronted Kiev instead of getting help, feeling that Ulissa's passing could have been prevented. Their conversation is interrupted by their grandfather, Raymond, who urges them to stop fighting so JJ can focus on recovery. JJ, still upset, confides in Raymond that Ulissa's death feels like a failure on many levels. Alan arrives at Theodosius's palace where his mother, Harley Drake, asks him to find out from Terry where Finnegan is. Confused, Alan questions why Terry would tell him anything, noting that if she listened to him, she would have let him leave Valley Park with her. Surprised by his willingness to leave, Harley is disheartened, and the two exchange tense words about Harley leaving town after losing custody. When Alan suggests Finnegan might not be worth saving, Harley insists that Finnegan is also a victim, but Alan believes Finnegan deserves his fate for enabling Kiev's actions. As Harley pleads for help, Alan points out her lack of concern over his own heartbreak, then walks away. Yvette Mitchell shocks her mother, Wanda, by revealing she won't attend Ulissa's funeral, reminding her that they weren't friends. Wanda struggles with Yvette's decision, but Yvette insists she doesn't need to honor someone who disliked her. When Udell enters, Yvette asks if she has to go, and he says it's not required. After Yvette leaves, Wanda confronts Udell, worrying that Yvette is avoiding the funeral for the wrong reasons. Udell, grateful Yvette survived the school tragedy, believes forcing her could push her into reckless behavior. But Wanda fears they can't protect Yvette from facing her trauma forever. Lorenzo asks his wife Clarice if she's sure about attending Ulissa's funeral, and Clarice insists she should go since she and Isabel have made amends. Isidore, surprised, questions how his mother could face Isabel after months of mistreatment. Clarice explains that while she and Isabel aren't friends, they now share the unfortunate bond of losing their youngest daughters. Isidore worries about her presence making things harder for Isabel, but Clarice reassures him and leaves. Afterward, Lorenzo scolds Isidore for being hard on Clarice, reminding him that Ulissa's death has reopened painful memories of their daughter Elvira's passing. Isabel informs Harley that she's being kicked out of Theodosius' palace because she defended the person responsible for Ulissa's passing. Harley, confused and sympathetic, argues that she hasn't broken any rules and shouldn't be punished for Kiev's actions. Isabel, frustrated, reminds Harley that she was involved with Kiev's father, who failed to control his son. When Harley accuses Isabel of ruining her marriage to Isidore, Isabel refuses to take the blame, instead accusing Harley of not preventing Ulissa's passing. After Harley threatens legal action, Isabel vows to personally throw her out, leading Harley to agree to leave. Pacho Torres confronts his younger sister Nichelle about whether Zeke will be attending the funeral. Nichelle brushes off her brother, and when Zeke arrives, Pacho suggests he leave. Nichelle insists on speaking with Zeke alone, and he asks if she wants him to stay away from Ulissa's funeral. Nichelle questions if he's axing because Ulissa didn't like him. Zeke assures her he's not looking for excuses and wants to support her through this difficult time. Touched by his persistence despite her distancing herself, Nichelle admits she's not ready to say goodbye, and Zeke promises to stay by her side. Isabel dreams about the day she gave birth to Ulissa, only for her ex-husband, Devante, to cruelly taunt her about losing their daughter. When Pacho wakes her, she reveals the nightmare's connection to reality. Ulissa's burial is that day. Pacho encourages Isabel to be strong for the family, but Isabel questions if it's about preserving their powerful image in Valley Park. Their tension escalates when Pacho suggests not inviting the Russos to the funeral, angering Isabel. Nichelle enters, disgusted by their arguing, reminding them of the somber occasion, and Isabel apologizes as they prepare for the service. JJ, reflecting on Ulissa's passing, tells his father Jeremiah that he's not ready to say goodbye. Jeremiah sympathizes, recalling how he never got to properly say goodbye to his mother after she lost her life in the 2010 Haiti earthquake. JJ, overwhelmed, struggles with the suddenness of Ulissa's death. Jeremiah encourages him to lean on family and trust God for strength. Meanwhile, Vanessa looks at a photo of Ulissa and confides in her mother Shelley. Though Vanessa is grieving missed future memories, Shelley reminds her to cherish the impact of their short friendship. Vanessa expresses hatred for Kiev, but Shelley urges her to find forgiveness as justice approaches. At the Russo estate, when Max questions if she'll pursue the death penalty, Heidi admits it might be the only fair outcome. Johnny enters, confused by the intense conversation, but Max insists now is the time to discuss justice. After Max leaves, Heidi expresses to Gianni that their son is clearly in pain, and she doesn't know how to help. Ben Russo visits the grave of his late aunt, Elvira Russo, reflecting on the pain of losing another young life to violence. He's surprised when Vivian appears, explaining she came to see her half-sister's grave after Ben's mention of how Ulysses' death reminded him of Elvira. As they share memories, Vivian wonders if she and Elvira would have gotten along. Ben believes Elvira would have loved having a younger sister. He urges Vivian to tell Lorenzo the truth about her identity, warning her not to repeat Elvira's mistakes. After Ben leaves, Vivian apologizes to Elvira for lying, vowing to reveal the truth after she takes over Russo Jewelers. Welcome to the 38th week of this year's In Times Like These recap. Now let's get into this, starting with Isabel Torres, who arrives to her daughter Ulysses' funeral with her other two children, Pacho and Nichelle. Isabel is comforted by the Dorvals and Isidore, while Pacho keeps Isidore at a distance after a call with his lover, Vivian Jones. Nichelle is supported by her boyfriend Zeke Franklin and his sister Quinlan. Jeremiah reads Ulysses' obituary and salvation testimony, followed by Pacho's emotional tribute. The Torres family is stunned when Isabel's ex-husband, Devante, unexpectedly appears at the burial. At the Dorval estate, Shelley shares her stress about hosting funeral guests, which is amplified by her early pregnancy. Jeremiah encourages her not to worry and suggests they tell their children, Vanessa and JJ, about the baby the next day to lift their spirits. Shelley is unsure, voicing concerns about the worsening world they're bringing the child into. Jeremiah reassures her, reminding her to trust in God's plan and that they'll raise their new baby with hope and faith. Shelley confides that she feels more worried than she did with Vanessa, but Jeremiah comforts her, assuring her everything will be fine. Vanessa is comforted by her boyfriend Max Russo, who jokes about seeing Ulysses again when they're old and grey in heaven, bringing a brief smile to her face. However, JJ interrupts, questioning how they could laugh at such a time. When Max tries to explain he was just cheering Vanessa up, JJ accuses him of failing to prevent Ulysses' passing by not acting sooner when Kiev was at the school. Max apologizes, but Vanessa defends him, saying Kiev is to blame. Max, feeling guilty, walks off, while JJ insists that Max needs to learn from his mistakes, just as he does. Quinlan checks on Zeke, who is worried about Nichelle not returning on time. Quinlan reassures him, explaining that everyone mourns differently, sharing how their own mother stayed stoic after her father's passing. Zeke, frustrated by comparisons to their mother, expresses his exhaustion. After Quinlan apologizes, Ben arrives, and Zeke goes inside to wait for Nichelle. Quinlan tells Ben about Zeke's concerns, and Ben admits Ulysses' funeral reminded him of his aunt Elvira's passing, even visiting her grave, which gave him a new perspective on his late aunt's passing. At the cemetery, Pacho confronts his father, Devante, questioning his presence. Devante explains he chose the burial over the funeral, but Pacho is furious at him for showing up. Devante apologizes, expressing grief over Ulysses' death and hoping to reconnect with his family. Nichelle coldly wishes it was Devante who died instead, accusing him of taking Elvira Russo's life. Devante deflects, refusing to confess, which enrages Pacho and Isabel. Isabel lashes out, accusing Devante of taking Elvira's life and having no right to mourn Ulysses. After an officer removes Devante, Isabel breaks down, comforted by her children. When Max and Heidi return to the Russo estate, Heidi notices her son is in a worse mood. Max confesses he feels partly responsible for Ulysses' passing. Heidi immediately reassures him that he's also a victim and shouldn't feel guilty for surviving. Max insists he could have called for help instead of confronting Kiev. Heidi tells him that none of that matters now. What's important is that he's okay. Max, feeling Vanessa's family blames him, shares that JJ holds him responsible. Heidi urges Max not to take JJ's words to heart and reminds him he did his best to protect others. When the Dorvals gather the family, JJ and Vanessa are surprised to hear good news. Their parents are expecting a new baby. Vanessa is thrilled, but JJ is conflicted, questioning why they would bring another child into such a harsh world. Vanessa, frustrated, insists that a new baby is what the family needs, though JJ remains distant, struggling to feel joy after Ulysses' passing. As JJ walks off, Jeremiah assures Shelley that JJ will come around. Vanessa encourages her mom, reminding her that she's excited to help with their new sibling this time. When Vivian sees Pacho, she asks how the funeral went, and he breaks down in her arms. She comforts him, assuring him there's no shame in crying, especially after losing his baby sister. Pacho reveals the shock of seeing his estranged father, Devante, at the funeral. Though Vivian understands Devante wanting to say goodbye, Pacho expresses anger, recalling how Devante still refuses to admit his past wrongs. After gathering himself, Pacho urges Vivian to focus on their plan to take over the family company. Vivian confirms she's targeting Isidor's shares, and Pacho asks how she plans to achieve this. Nichelle thanks Zeke for keeping her company at Theodosius Palace and reveals she saw her father, Devante, before arriving at the Dorval estate. Shocked, Zeke asks how she felt, and Nichelle admits she adored her father but now hates him after Ulysses' passing. She's angry not only at Devante but also at God, questioning why Ulysses had to die. Zeke tries to comfort her, but Nichelle grows frustrated, feeling abandoned. In her pain, Nichelle suggests they hook up, but Zeke hesitates, not wanting to take advantage of her vulnerable state. Despite his reluctance, Nichelle makes out with him. At Global News Press, Quinlan welcomes Pacho back and shares her excitement for her new TV program. However, Pacho asks her to focus on violent school tragedies for her first episode. Though Quinlan acknowledges it's a heavy start, she understands the importance, especially with their siblings still healing. Quinlan agrees to take on the serious topic, hoping her program can help find solutions, and Pacho praises her for not letting him down. Vanessa, haunted by flashbacks of the school tragedy, is startled when Max approaches her. Max apologizes, understanding that she's reliving the trauma of seeing Ulysses' final moments. Vanessa assures him he's not to blame, echoing what Max's mother told him. Still, Max struggles with guilt, feeling he could have stopped Kiev if they'd acted differently. Vanessa reminds him that Kiev had planned the attack regardless, and while Max wishes he knew what Kiev was thinking, Vanessa emphasizes that they can't change the past, but can look forward to justice being served. JJ, still processing the aftermath of the school tragedy, is approached by Yvette Mitchell, who asks how he's doing. He sarcastically responds, reminding her that his first day back involves learning that a friend died because of a former friend's violent outburst. When Yvette asks if he's referring to her past involvement with Kiev, JJ criticizes her for warning Max and Vanessa instead of alerting school staff. Yvette admits she feels bad for Ulysses' death, but refuses to take responsibility for Kiev's actions. JJ accuses her of guilt and questions why she didn't attend Ulysses' funeral, ultimately wishing the roles were reversed, leaving Yvette hurt as he walks away. In Isidor's office at Russo Jewelers, Vivian reveals to Isidor that Lorenzo, his father, signed half of his shares in Russo Jewelers over to her, citing her work ethic. Isidor is shocked, asserting that only family should hold shares. When Vivian mentions that Lorenzo intends for Gianni to succeed him, Isidor feels betrayed. She offers to help Isidor take over the company, believing Lorenzo is no longer fit to lead, and questions what she stands to gain if Isidor becomes CEO. Can't get enough of the crazy world of In Times Like These? Then, treat yourself to a binge watch of In Times Like These. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you're not ready for what's to come. But tune in anyway.